What? Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why the storage is getting low. So I'll try to make this quick. We need to get back what we've lost. And that's not always going to be that's not going to happen the way we want it to happen. However, we can move forward, recreate what we've lost. And this time, not let outside forces take it from us. If God gave us the ability to create our own wealth, let's not let other communities take it from us. Let's not let the ignorant people within our communities take it from us. And that being said, let's try to get through another episode.
Howard Carter was transferred. He was doing well. He's transferred to Saqqara to oversee that monument, that area. And he was fired because he was a good man. He was fired in 1904. There was an incident that's called the French Incident to this day. Carter was a chief inspector for the Saqqara area. Some French tourists wanted to go into a tomb, but they hadn't purchased a ticket. The workman who was in charge, the Egyptian workman, the Ghafir as they're called, the guard, told them, no, you can't go in without a ticket. And the French were drunk, and they got abusive. They pushed by him. The guard defended himself, pushed them away, and the French complained. They complained because it was unheard of then in colonial times for an Egyptian to push a Frenchman. Now, there was a political incident. The head of the Antiquity Service was French. Also a good man. It wasn't that he was just backing up Frenchmen. But he asked Carter to have the Guardian apologize to the French who didn't have the ticket, who were drunk and pushed in. And Carter refused to have the man do that. He said no. He stood by the Guardian and said no, he was right. Carter was fired from his job. So now, it's about 1904, and Carter is unemployed. He's broke. He's no longer an inspector. What does he do? Well, he tries to make a living, by the way, by selling his drawings. He does paintings of the tombs and sells them to tourists. He does things like that. But now we're going to get a progression that's going to lead to the discovery of Tutankhamun, partly because Carter's out of work, partly because of other people. Theodore Davis is still excavating in the Valley of the Kings. Now without Carter, he's got a new guy, Edward Ayrton. Ayrton was trained by Petrie also, like all these guys, sharp eye. Ayrton found in the Valley of the Kings, under a rock, a cup, a faience cup, with the name, now faience is just a ceramic, with the name of Tutankhamun. This is the first clue to connect Tutankhamun with the Valley of the Kings. So, at Amarna, Petrie had found these little bits and pieces with Tutankhamun's name. Now we've got a cup in the Valley of the Kings with Tutankhamun's name. We know that maybe Tutankhamun is buried here. Maybe. Theodore Davis next discovers, 1907 now roughly, a small pit. Very small pit. And in the pit is a curious assemblage of things. There's mummy bandages, wrappings, with Tutankhamun's name on it. Bones of animals. There's floral collars. These are pectorals, right? They're like broad collars that are worn around the neck, made of flowers sewn to papyrus. They're kind of festive things. And Davis had thought that he had found perhaps the remains of Tutankhamun's tomb. He really didn't know what he was doing. What Davis really had found was the remains of the last meal eaten by Tutankhamun's family and friends when they placed him in the tomb. There's a last meal, a ritual meal, that's eaten outside the tomb. They wear floral collars, they eat certain animals, they drink wine, and all of this came from that last meal. It was kind of considered sacred because it was part of a burial. Now Davis thought maybe this is sort of, the tomb had been robbed, things thrown in here, so he thought, well, it looks like maybe Tutankhamun's not going to be found. Then Davis found a small tomb, terribly plundered, practically nothing in it a few pieces of gilded wood, but on the gilt, a little piece of gold, was Tutankhamun's name. Davis was now certain. He had found Tutankhamun's tomb. It had been terribly robbed. There was nothing left to be found. Theodore Davis published his work in a book called The Tomb of Tutankhamun. He thought he had found the Tutankhamun. Actually, it's called Tutankhamoniu or something like that when they called the name differently then. And in this book, he says the famous statement. He says, "I fear the Valley of the Kings is now played out." In other words, well, we found Tutankhamun's tomb, the missing tomb. Nothing much left to find. Right? The valley is exhausted. He's, of course, wrong. Tutankhamun's tomb still remains undiscovered. But this is the history leading up to the valley. There's another discovery that's made that's relevant. The famous Tomb 55. One of the big mystery tombs in the history of the world. Tomb 55 was found in 1907. It had been robbed. It was a strange assortment of things. It was a tomb that had a big shrine, a wooden gilded shrine, for Queen Tai. Queen Tai, Amenhotep III's wife, right? The mother of Akhenaten. Big gilded shrine. There were some jars in which the internal organs of a person had been put for mummification, with the head of a royal person on it, but uninscribed. It had been polished and the name had been taken off. But inside that tomb was a beautiful, beautiful anthropoid coffin, a wooden coffin, gilded, clearly royal, for somebody, but the name had been removed. Inside the coffin was a mummy, a royal mummy. It had around it a gold pectoral in the form of a vulture. But the names, there were no names. Nobody knew who this mummy was, and nobody was sure. When the mummy was touched, by the way, it almost crumbled to dust. All that was left was bones. It was so fragile. So this is a mystery tomb. Some people thought it was Tutankhamun in that tomb, maybe. But now the general feeling is, no, it wasn't Tutankhamun. This is a reburial of another king from the same time, but a different king, and we'll get to that. But Tomb 55 was a possible tomb of Tutankhamun, but pretty much it's a long shot. People didn't think it was Tutankhamun. Many people didn't. Now, what happens? The next event that leads to the discovery, the actual discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, is an automobile accident. 1903, the first automobile accident in history. And it's Lord Carnarvon, a wealthy English lord who has the second car ever registered in England, and he wraps it around a tree, basically. He's injured, and what do wealthy Englishmen do? They go to Aswan, they go to Egypt to recover. He fell in love with Egypt and decided it would be nice to excavate. So, he hires an unemployed excavator, Howard Carter, barely surviving, trying to sell his paintings. And Carter and Carnarvon team up, and it's a good team. The wealthy, educated, suave Lord Carnarvon, and the uneducated but really smart, fair Howard Carter. And they start to excavate, but they can't yet excavate in the Valley of the Kings because Theodore Davis still has the permission there. So they find other things, and they excavate for 5 years and find nothing much. But then Theodore Davis gives up the concession. He says, the valley is exhausted. I'm not excavating here anymore. And Howard Carter knew what was going on. He knew that Davis hadn't found the tomb of Tutankhamun, and he said to Carnarvon, let's get the concession to the Valley of the Kings and excavate there. And that's exactly what they did. In 1917, they picked up the concession to excavate in the Valley of the Kings, specifically to look for Tutankhamun. They weren't just digging around. They were looking for the tomb of Tutankhamun. Now, another thing that's very important about Carter, he knew the Valley of the King well, right? He knew the Valley of the Kings. He had been the chief inspector for the area. He made a careful map of that area, and he noted where everything had been excavated. And he and Carnarvon were going to excavate down to bedrock every inch of the valley that hadn't been excavated. That was really the plan. So he intends to excavate right down to bedrock every inch of the valley till they find the tomb of Tutankhamun. Now, they can't start immediately, by the way, because of World War I, but eventually they get going. They have some minor successes, very difficult. Then finally, 1922, the discovery is made. It was November 4th of 1922 when they found the first step leading down to the tomb of Tutankhamun. It's one of the great archaeological stories of all time. And let me tell you a really neat detail. Amazing. They excavated for a few years and found nothing. Carnarvon said he was going to give up. Says, no luck. Howard Carter says, give me one more season. I'll pay for it. He couldn't pay for it. Carnarvon was a gentleman and said, okay, I'll give you one last season and then that's it. So they go back to excavate, and in 1922, they find a step. And it looks like a step going into the ground, probably leading to a tomb. One day, all the steps are cleared, and sure enough, there are steps going into the ground, leading down to a wall that is sealed. Sealed. It looks like they found a virtually intact tomb. Right? Now, Carter wires Carnarvon back in England and says, have made wonderful discovery, come quickly. So he's waiting for his patron. He's waiting for his patron to come and share in the discovery. Now, as Carter was clearing the steps, right, he comes to a passageway, and there are certain things in the passageway that bothered him. This descending passageway, going down to the tomb, had apparently had a little tunnel through it made. You see, when they closed the tomb, the ancients very often would fill up the passageway with rubble, make it harder for robbers. But it looked like robbers perhaps had been through that. There's a dark spot in the middle of that rubble. But it looked like still the wall had been resealed. It looked good. Carnarvon comes over, and they cut a little hole in the wall, and that's when they make the famous discovery. Carter's looking through, trying to see what he can see, and Carnarvon says, what do you see? Wonderful things, is what Howard Carter said. Wonderful things. He's looking through, and what he sees, it looked like gold. Everywhere the glint of gold is what he said. But it was furniture that was gilded. It was the beginning of the tomb that was packed with objects. Packed. There were ritual beds on which Tutankhamun was probably laid for rituals. Even chariots, right? Fragile chariots, one of the first chariots. Chariots were very rare because they broke so easily. Tutankhamun had chariots. It was amazing. It took a year to clear that first room. They had to photograph everything. Be careful. Then, eventually, 1923, they reached the burial chamber. Now, the burial chamber is a small room. Tiny. And almost the entire burial chamber was taken up with a huge gilded shrine made of wood. It took Carter quite a while to dismantle it. But he dismantled the gilded shrine, and then there was another shrine inside it.
Ooh.
And then another shrine inside it.
Ooh.
Now, one of the reasons Carter had such a hard time dismantling this wooden shrine is that when the workmen put it in the tomb, and they assembled it in the tomb, it was too big to get through a doorway, they had to take it in pieces. They were working with fresh wood, strong wood. Carter is now working, with 1,000-year-old wood. This is, ancient wood. It's got to be very careful. But the other reason it was so hard to dismantle was the workmen had screwed it up. They put it on the top on the wrong way. There were instructions. It was like a kit. And they had written on the sides of the panels instructions, front, top, bottom, and the workmen had gotten the top the wrong way. They put it on wrong. So Carter was having a hard time taking this thing apart. But he finally got it apart. And inside was a huge, just a spectacular thing. This beautiful sarcophagus, right? Beautiful. You had, it was so hard to take it apart. There were coffins nested inside each other. You had a stone sarcophagus with a lid, right? Now, the lid was very difficult to remove because it had been cracked. It had been cracked. And, Carter had so many problems I can't tell you. For example, finally gets the lid off. It's suspended in air, right? And he gets a political problem. Howard Carter had invited to the opening the wives of the various people working on his excavation. Various Egyptologists' wives. but he hadn't invited any of the Egyptian officials, any of their wives. He was treating the tomb almost like it was England's property. The Egyptians rightly so, got their nose out of joint, said, where are the wives of Egyptian officials? Howard Carter said no, and the Egyptians locked him out of the tomb. Howard Carter was locked out of the tomb with the lid suspended over the sarcophagus.
Oh, wow.
Right? Incredible. Finally, it took almost a year to resolve this difficulty. The Egyptians eventually knew that Carter was the right man to do this excavation. So he came back. And when he came back, he discovered the nested coffins. 3 coffins, one nested inside the other. Now, they couldn't figure out why it was so heavy. Couldn't figure out why is this thing so heavy when they tried to move it. The inner coffin was solid gold, made of 250 pounds. 250 pounds of solid gold. It was quite a problem to get it out. Quite a problem. But Carter eventually solved it. Right? Eventually solved it. Now, one of the things that Carter often said about Tutankhamun's tomb, and he repeated this often, he said, you know, we found the treasures, we found the tomb, but Tutankhamun has eluded me. Now, what he means is this. The mummy of Tutankhamun, the first pharaoh's tomb found intact, was still in the tomb. You actually had Tutankhamun, this king who up until now was a mystery, just a name. But Carter wasn't just a treasure hunter. He was looking for knowledge. And what had eluded Carter and everybody else in this tomb of Tutankhamun is who was Tutankhamun. There were no papyri in the entire tomb. Absolutely none. There was not a single thing that said who his father was or who his mother was. To this day, archaeologists still debate who was Tutankhamun's mother and who was Tutankhamun's father. It seems strange, doesn't it? A pharaoh is buried in his tomb with literally thousands of objects, no expense spared, and there is nothing historical to tell us about who he was. Right? Carter was always puzzled by that, right? Not really understanding. You know, why was this? What was the reason? There are other things about the tomb that are rather puzzling. For example, no crown was found inside the tomb. He was king of Egypt. They had his throne. They had his baby sandals. They even had his baby throne when he was a kid. You know, when he was a boy king. But where? Where was his crown? Now, this leads me to my suggestion, which I made once before, that perhaps, just perhaps, the crown was a magical object, passed from king to king, so that was the one object that the pharaoh could not take with him to the next world. But Tutankhamun sure tried to take everything else to the next world. But the result of Carter's excavation and the discovery didn't help us that much about who Tutankhamun really was. Now, next time, we'll talk about the life of Tutankhamun.
Okay, people. So, what do you think? Tutankhamun, King Tut. Ha. Why? Why would this guy, he's doing this excavation and he has his grand opening, but he doesn't invite the Egyptian officials? They're the ones that gave him permission to dig, and he doesn't invite them. That's like, you need some cash, you short on money, you go over your boy's house, y'all playing the game, and you see $5 on the dresser. So some time go by, and your boy like, man, I must have dropped my money. What's up? I'm missing $5. I thought I had it on the dresser, but I don't see it up here. I must have dropped it somewhere. You know damn well you took that $5 off that dresser. That's not your dresser. That's not even your house. So how you gonna disrespect the man's house after he let you in? Understand what I'm saying now? These people go over to Egypt doing all this digging and researching and documenting, but they don't give credit where credit is due. That's why in the 20th century, in the late 20th century, you get all these nutball professors and so-called professionals in archaeology saying that they're saying there's no way on earth that black people could have created such beauty. Really? Out of all the known slaves in the world, who was the last people to be enslaved? What people were enslaved the longest? Black people, Negroes. But you don't think that we could have built pyramids? We could have manufactured gold plates? Yeah, okay. Although you're digging for this information in a country full of black people, from the west coast of Africa to the east coast of Africa. Really? From northern Africa down to southern Africa? You don't say. Oh, and the other one. The aliens must have invented this. The aliens came down here and they instructed people, ancient people, on how to build these things. Okay. All right. So now I'm an alien. My ancestors are aliens. Interesting. So if that's the case, then just what type of alien do they think we are? Because, alien could be any person that's, foreign to a certain land. When they talk about Mexicans, they often say illegal aliens. I didn't know there was such thing as a legal alien. But okay, we'll roll with that. So you got illegal aliens. What makes them illegal? Because they didn't go through the proper channels to get into the country, to get into that state. They're foreigners to that land. Africans are not foreigners to Africa. It's their land. It's our land. We're not foreigners. So I don't understand why people just couldn't come clean. I understand slave masters didn't want to pay money. They wouldn't have made as much money as they did if they had actually paid us for our services. But that's not my problem, Joe. We got kids to feed, houses, homes to take care of. Pay me, And even to this day, they still don't want to pay us what we should get. They pay us what they want us to have. And then they turn around and say, well, we got to take out for this. We got to take out for Social Security. We got to take out for Medicaid. We got to take out. Like, damn. I finally get a chance to make some money, and now I got to give it up to the government. Whew. Okay. Well, good people, that is pretty much all I have to say for today's conversation. And as always, we'll chat later.